Sorry, Rebecca. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Excited to talk today. I've done a few of these podcasts and different types of interviews during the pandemic, probably more than I normally would, which has been nice. It's allowed me to share a little bit about my story, the NWHL, my team, my experience playing hockey professionally, and obviously a lot of negative has come out of the pandemic, but I've really been sort of using this downtime to educate myself on a lot of social issues and spend more time with family and friends. So it's been nice in that regard. A little positivity to start this off, right?
Of course, of
How,
course.
how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I do have to agree with you on that. Like, for myself, you said that you're doing a lot more of these like interview podcasts more than you normally would, since the whole pandemic's kind of going on. Yeah, like I've been finding myself being able to do a lot more, and just having more of the time. I mean, probably not in the last month and a half, just with work really picking up. I think the first month in, 2 months in, yeah, I was like drilling in podcasts like 2 or 3 a day,
Wow.
and just everyone was so free. And now with everything like sports coming back into play, and just with everyone kind of getting busier and everyone going back to work, it is getting a little bit more difficult getting people on the podcast. But and then for myself, like I'm a DSW, so I work in social services, like I'm a social service worker. So I'm part time, so I work basically like full time hours as a part time. So I'm busy. So
Wow.
I
Two,
definitely
three
know where you're coming
podcasts
from.
in a day. That seems like a lot, but I know that that's a good thing for you. That means, I mean, I know you said it's kind of died down a little bit since then, but happy to help in whatever way I can with my network, like we chatted about offline previously.
hmm No, I appreciate you coming on here, and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Yeah, so just to kind of, before I get into your career and other topics, so obviously you're from New Jersey. So are you still currently living in New Jersey?
Yep.
Okay.
I haven't relocated at all. Been living here for the last 4+ years, and I grew up in New Jersey originally, so that was just coming back after college.
Okay. And how's the COVID over there right now?
Well, obviously, New Jersey, the New York City metropolitan area was pretty much a hot spot, like the worst place to be,
Mm-hmm.
right when this pandemic started. And I actually worked in Manhattan, so that stopped pretty quickly. I think my company was probably one of the first ones, at least in terms of like people that I talked to who worked in Manhattan. It's probably one of the first ones to tell people to start working out from home, which was nice. To see them respond that way and take it seriously. But things have gotten a lot better here, since back in March, which has been good. I think, obviously there's some people who are not taking it as seriously or being irresponsible and not following guidelines and everything. But I think as a whole, like the state of New Jersey has done a pretty good job of following the orders and trying to stop this thing as or at least help flatten the curve and bring the number of cases down as best they could. So that's been a positive thing, and
Mm-hmm.
making me proud to be here and be from here.
Well, it's certainly not like Florida. Whew, my God. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Florida's totally lost it. Like I wanna give hope that they can flatten the curve as well and try to have some kind of resolve before the fall, like the winter season comes, where more than likely, I mean, I don't like to be negative, but I'm just trying to stay realistic. And with the flu season coming around the corner, and the cold season coming around, it's going to be really harsh. And I'm a little worried for for a place like Florida where they haven't, like, I mean, I think the whole world's experienced a little bit of the lockdown, but I think with Florida they have completely, like, I think they've totally lost control of everything, and it's gonna be really hard to kind of see that state come back and come back and flatten the curve if they can. So
Yeah, and originally, like when this first started, I thought like, where can I go? You know, people getting stir crazy. Where can I go that's like I can drive to feasibly and would be a nice vacation spot? Because I had a vacation to Costa Rica planned for the beginning of April that I had to
oh, no way.
postpone. Yeah, I was really excited, and you know, I'll probably still end up going eventually. We'll see when. But yeah, I was thinking about where to go and what would be a nice place to visit. And Florida, it's a long drive from New Jersey, but still doable for sure. And you could stop along the way and stuff, hit some good spots. But yeah, I quickly realized that was probably not the best idea. And I think it's tough too with places that have certain climates or different attractions, like why people want to travel there. Obviously, Florida's a vacation place, and you know, you've seen it a little bit with the Jersey Shore too, where sometimes it's a little bit different. I don't live by the shore, but I've been down the shore a little bit, and sometimes it's a little bit. It's congested. You know, naturally during summer it's going to be congested. That's where people go from New Jersey in the summer, and I'm a little bit more, a little north of the shore, so it is pretty, like New Jersey's the most densely populated state in the U.S.
Right.
But I think people are taking it seriously, and like we don't have like a beach right around, you know, right a mile from my house to go to. So been able to limit it in that way. But
Well,
it's
that's
tough.
good. Yeah, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen in the States. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be biased here because I'm Canadian and you're living.
You guys have handled it very well, so I'm a
But
bit jealous.
yeah, I don't want to like boast here or anything, but we have taken it pretty well versus the States. You know, of course, it's nobody's fault. It's a virus. It travels and eats hosts. But I mean, certainly the president isn't really doing his job and protecting the people in the States. So I guess we'll have to see if, you know, he has any kind of sense if he's going to help out with that. I'm very doubtful, but we'll
Me
see.
too. Won't get too political, but
Yeah.
becoming Canadian, living in Canada has become a lot more attractive over the last couple of years here.
Right.
Not to
Right.
mention your appreciation and love for hockey.
Yes. Well, that's pretty. If you're Canadian, you gotta like hockey. That's what I always hear from people. But talking about hockey now, so I guess I want to start from the beginning. What made you get into hockey in the first place?
So growing up, I lived on a cul-de-sac. So it was a dead-end street, kind of shaped like almost like a hockey rink. It was a little more circular, but lived right at the end of the cul-de-sac. My house was literally the last house. So the environment that I grew up in, kids were always playing outside, right? And you see a lot more of it right now,
Oh
which
my God,
I
yeah.
love, because you know, a lot of times more recently, before the pandemic, I would be driving through my town or neighborhoods around New Jersey and not see as many kids. And it's, you know, it's sad because some of my fondest memories are of just playing outside, you know, not to see who wins or loses, you know, really just to have fun and do something that you love and be
Hmm.
outside, enjoy the fresh air and get some exercise. So that's really how I started playing. I started playing roller hockey, street hockey first, and then I picked up a little bit of roller hockey, but I never really played like anything too organized in terms of like inline. It's really just outside of my cul-de-sac, with the kids who lived on my block and in the neighborhood. So I had a neighbor who was a huge Devils fan, big Marty Berger fan, and he really got my brother and I into it. My parents never played hockey or anything. My dad grew up on Long Island. He was an Islanders fan. My uncle played hockey more competitively, but everyone just sort of bought in and recognized how incredible the sport is. So my dad would get out there and skate with us a lot too. My uncle. So it really became a family thing, and I became a big Devils fan. Still am. Was a big Marty fan. Obviously, you have to be. Especially in those days. I grew up in the '90s, and the Devils obviously
Yeah.
were pretty successful.
Yes, they were.
From the mid to late '90s to the early 2000s. So it was a good time to really hop on that Devils bandwagon and become a fan because they were so good. But yeah, I fell in love with it from there and tried skating on ice, learned how to skate on ice with my brother. We both took skating lessons, played in some house leagues together, and then actually my brother started playing for a travel team. He's younger than me. He's 2.5 years younger than me. So he started playing for a travel team that was actually called the Youth Devils. And I was a rink rat. All right. So both my parents worked in Manhattan. They were commuting every day. So I really was dragged to the rink for every single practice and games. And that ended up turning into, well, I want to go, because I love watching. I learned so much about hockey from just watching my brother's team, their practices, their games. And really, I was that kid who was, in the rink lobby, stick handling, passing with other kids, and when it really wasn't allowed by the rink. So I really honed my skills there and through playing street hockey and roller hockey. And I didn't realize I was always pretty athletic. I played pretty much any sport you could name at some level, or at least the traditional sports. And soccer was my favorite sport growing up. I don't know. I fell in love with that first. Soccer was my first love, and I thought that I was good at it. So that's sort of why I stuck with it. And just the friends that I had made through playing soccer, I thought that's where my future was. I thought that maybe one day I would play soccer collegiately, and that would be my path. But I think part of the reason I felt so strongly about soccer is really because there were female role models, female soccer players for me to look up to and emulate. But that didn't really exist in the hockey space. So I really didn't start playing organized hockey because I didn't realize that girls could even play hockey. I didn't know that there were girls hockey teams. Every once in a while you saw a girl on a boys team growing up in New Jersey, but there wasn't anyone other than really the Olympians, the Olympic level. That's all I really had exposure to. So ultimately, one day I just asked my dad, girls can play hockey. Can I play for a team? And he said yes. And the rest is pretty much history, because when I started playing hockey for an actual team and more competitively, I fell in love with that, and it took over as my number one sport. And I still played soccer a lot, but hockey was really my number one passion. And from there, I really just decided that I wanted to do that and pursue that, throughout my life, and be in the Olympics someday for hockey.
Well, that's quite the story. And I think that's great that you tell it the way you did, because it kind of shows that if you have a passion in something, you should go for it. Whether or not, if it feels right, and if it's something that you are passionate about and something that you want to do, I definitely think that it's a path that you should try and take as a risk, for sure.
Absolutely. And I definitely faced some challenges along the way. The first team that I tried out for was actually a boys team. It was the same organization that my brother played for, but I was older, so we weren't going to be on the same team. But I tried out and I didn't make the team, and obviously I was pretty disappointed, but I thought that I should have made it, so I had that belief in myself. Most women around my age grew up playing boys hockey at some point. But I never did. at least for a travel team. I played with a lot of boys growing up, don't get me wrong, but that was more recreationally. So once I got cut from that team, I really just stayed on the girls' path and pursued girls' hockey from there on. I did have a brief stint in high school, or before high school, after my 8th grade year. I was set to, attend my local high school, and they didn't have a girls' team at the time. They do now, which is awesome. But they only had a boys' team at the time, and I played in a spring league before my freshman year. I played in a spring league with the boys and enjoyed it, but I didn't have any experience checking. So and nobody ever really taught me that. So I did get hit into the boards one time pretty hard, but I've always been a player who wants fighting in women's hockey. Well, not fighting, but at least body checking.
Yeah.
To have the game really be the same, but at the same time, I appreciate the women's game a lot too, and the and how it is unique. But yeah, I was set to go to my local high school. I played in that spring boys league, and didn't end up going to my local high school. I went away to prep school and played for a girls team, so that was short-lived.
Okay. And so what do you mean short-lived? Was it just a temporary thing?
Right, so I was playing in that spring league my 8th grade year just to get me ready to play. I hadn't even tried out for the boys hockey team for my local high school or anything. This was before that point. I was just playing in that spring league to get myself prepared to play boys hockey, because I hadn't really played competitively in a while, or like I said, for any travel teams. So that was my plan going into high school to, play girls soccer for my local high school and play boys hockey for my local high school, and then maybe for my a girls club team as well.
Right.
But I'm happy I took the path that I did, because I ended up loving my high school experience. I went to a prep school up in Lake Placid, New York, which is one of my favorite places now. And yeah, I had a great time. I really loved the school. It was it was a very unconventional school. It was about 100 kids, all winter athletes. So I went to school with a bunch of skiers, snowboarders, ski jumpers, bobsledders, luge, figure skating. So that was pretty cool, because not everyone gets to say that they know someone who does ski jumping, which is just a crazy sport, but so cool. But yeah, I went down that path for a reason, and it led me to where I am now, and I loved that experience. So I think I made the right decision.
Well, that's great to hear. And then kind of jumping forward here, and then you went from the Providence College, and then you went from there, and then that led you to Metropolitan. I'm gonna say I want to say Riveters. Okay. So how was that process going from college to the women's NHL?
So actually, I graduated from Providence, and then I ended up staying in Providence and retired. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree, and then like I said, I stayed there, and I got my master's. I got my MBA. And during that time, during those 2 years, or really I did it in a year and a half, but during that time, I wasn't playing competitively. I coached a girls' youth team up there in Rhode Island, and I actually worked at a Pure Hockey, a hockey shop locally, and so I was still staying close to the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I was in grad school. I was a grad assistant at my school, and I was continuing my education. So I had a little bit of a break from hockey, at least from the playing side. And I had somewhat of an identity crisis, like trying to figure out who I was beyond just being an athlete and being a hockey player. And I did a lot of reflecting and, soul searching, figuring out who I was and who I wanted to be. But I think something that's, fundamentally me to my core is playing hockey and giving back to the sport. So when I finished up my master's degree and moved back home, the Riveters just happened to be moving from Brooklyn to New Jersey. So that time when I moved back home there, the NWHL had existed for only 1 year. So I've played in the league every year except the first year. Like I said, they were relocating from Brooklyn to New Jersey. I had some friends who played on the team the first year, and they were like, you have to do this. Like, it's just, everything is aligning perfectly for you to do this. Not that Brooklyn's even that far from where I live in New Jersey, but yeah, so I decided to play, and it was a battle for me to, after not playing for a couple of years, getting back into it, because I wasn't training the same way, that I had previously. I wasn't in the same shape by any means. And even if I had been still training, nothing is the same as getting on the ice and, the muscles that you're engaging when you're skating and playing hockey. So it took a while. It took a while for me to like feel good again and feel the same. Probably even over a season, I would say.
Right.
Because I was used to being on the ice, a bit more in the NWHL. In college we skated pretty much every day. We would have 1 day off a week, and the NWHL, most of us have full-time jobs, and so we're not practicing together as a team every day.
Right.
So when that's given that, you're an adult now and you have other obligations, you just can't get on the ice necessarily every single day. So that's probably why it took so long for me to really get back into the swing of things and, shake off the rust and feel more comfortable, and like I was becoming, getting back to being the player that I had been. And that was, I can talk about that forever, because that was a pretty long process through my 4 years playing in the league, and just how much I feel like I've grown personally, not only on the ice, but as a leader and everything. So it was a pretty drastic jump for me, just because I had been away from the game. The only time I really skated was in running practices, but that's more, pushing pucks and demonstrating things, not actually playing in game situations.
Well, that's good. That's good. And jumping forward, so obviously you're with the Riveters, and then you got the A on the jersey. So what does that? How does that feel to be like the assistant captain? Are you still the assistant captain?
As of now, because nobody has told me otherwise, but I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work heading into the season. If we're going to vote on captains again, that's how we did it last year.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I'm sure there'll be another process like that. Like, it's not just going to be handed to me. But that was a huge honor to get the A last season, and something that I took very seriously. I'd captained teams before, but not really since high school. So, not necessarily that. I don't want to make the argument. I want to make the argument that having a letter on your jersey, shouldn't really matter. But at the same time, just after all I had been through personally, through my 3 years prior in the league, I wasn't really a leader in the room. I wasn't a loud voice. I wasn't even a player who got a ton of ice time, to be quite honest. So last season was really my breakout season, I would say in all regards. Getting the letter on my jersey, just in terms of production and how much I was contributing on the ice, my performance, and then really the leadership component too, because I was previously more of a utility player. I'm naturally a defender. I have been my whole career, but I played a lot of forward my first 3 seasons in the NWHL, so I was at a new position that I didn't really know. That's also why it was a huge learning curve for me, because I hadn't only retired for a couple of years, but I was playing mostly a new position. So had to learn that, and also transitioning from defense to forward, I wasn't always like the fastest player. I wasn't always thinking go, go, go. I would like take everything in and make my decision and move the puck, like break out the puck from from your D zone. So yeah, it was a little bit different, but I think it really helped my overall game and made me a well-rounded player. So I wouldn't take it back. That was a good thing. But like I said, just being one of the few veteran players on my team at the start of last season, I think we only had it's myself and another woman, and she had played on the team for all 5 years at that point. So she had a year on me, but other than us two, everyone else was pretty much a rookie, and then we had some other veteran players join on throughout the season. So that was nice to get some familiar faces and some more experienced players. But yeah, I honestly felt like I got the A because I was one of the veteran players, but one of the few veteran players. But you're given that opportunity, you have to step up and actually be the leader that your teammates see you as. So that was a great experience for me to learn how to lead a team at the professional level, because that's again something that I had never done in my prior seasons with the Riveters.
Right. And then that's it. Like, you typically find the veterans getting the A or the C, or however the teams work it out. And then I mean, like, I don't know, like, I think there's very few exceptions to that rule, I think. I mean, I guess I don't know if there's a rule. But I think there is a little bit of an exception to that, like whether or not, like, if we're talking like if you have that star player coming in to whatever league that you're playing in, of course they're going to look more to them as getting the A or the C, because especially in depending on their contract, how much they're getting paid. I mean, you're not going to have like, for example, because obviously I'm a Toronto fan, so I always like to like refer to them. So if you have a guy like Mitch Marner, who's like, he might only been in the league for like 3 or 4 years, but if the guy's making like $11 million, yeah, he probably should be getting the A. And versus a guy that might have been on the team longer, but because he's more of the star player, they might be more deemed to give him the A, depending on what was in the contract as well. But I don't know. Personally, for me, I think it should be the veterans that get the A, because I mean the veterans are more likely the ones that are going to be the ones to lead, and that's what you need, not so much the star player, I find.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you there, because just in terms of the NWHL, like, we still are a very new league. So even
Right.
like 1 year under your belt is
Because
significant.
you're a veteran.
I mean, my co-alternate captain, that was her first full season playing in the league. So, and she did a phenomenal job, and I think she is just naturally a leader, and an extremely hard worker. So I have a lot of respect for her. But I don't know. I felt that tends to happen where it's like, just as you're saying, the veteran player who gets the letter, but at the same time, it doesn't always mean that they're deserving of it.
Yeah.
But I think the balance is also important, because we think of ourselves, and when I say we, I talk referring to the two other captains, our captain and my co-alternate captain. We think of ourselves as a team. There's not really a hierarchy, which I think is great. We all have different roles on the team, separate from our leadership roles. So I think it's important to have balance there, and not every one of the captains, if you have multiple, should be somebody who gets big minutes, because I find I think one of my biggest strengths, or at least last season in my leadership, was being able to relate to those players who didn't get as much ice time, maybe, because I had been through that, right?
Right.
For example, our captain, her name's Madison Packer. I don't know if she's experienced that. I know that she hasn't experienced that at the pro level. I'm not sure if she has in her career. She's played for pretty competitive teams, and I think always been sort of a big fish in a small pond. I mean, she went to Wisconsin, so they're like a powerhouse of a program. So they're all really good. but at the same time, she's a top caliber player who maybe has not had as many of those experiences. So I was able to share my story with some of my teammates and be there for them and support them and say, okay, here's how you get the ice time that you want. You're doing all the right things, or you could be doing more of this, and whatever. So like I said, balance is really important, and not just having veterans, but I think it's important for rookies and new players to have a voice too, especially in my league where we tend to have a lot of rookies season to season. So I think it's always interesting to get their perspective too on different things, because the veterans have been around the block and sort of know the inner workings of the league and are used to it. But those new players bring a valuable perspective to just coming from college and a different level and a different program too, which is high level as well. And I found myself like learning a lot from my teammates who had just graduated.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's understandable. No, I guess I got to ask you. So how was your feeling when you won the Isabel Cup?
Oh my God, that was unreal. I thought we had a good chance going into the season just based on the roster that we had. And we had a very successful season. We only lost like a couple games, I think, that year during the regular season. So we had a good chance of making it, but the championship game was very close. It was a 1-0 game. It was honestly a real nail biter most of the game, and I actually didn't play in the game.
Really?
Yep, I did not suit up. I was watching from the stands, and
Oh, that
I
sucks.
it does, but well, it does be for a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons being that I get more nervous when I'm watching something, when I'm watching a hockey game, than I do when I'm playing in it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like on the edge of my seat the entire game and like so nervous. My teammate scored the only goal scorer of the game, scored a phenomenal goal. She roofed it up high, and she literally had nothing, no body part on the ice. She was like diving. It was like kind of like a Bobby Orr type goal, people would say. That famous goal, but it was phenomenal. Like as she was falling forward, I think she was maybe like getting tripped up by something, or maybe herself. But as she was falling forward, she just roofed it high, and that was the only goal of the game. And our goalie played unreal. The other players who didn't dress, once the buzzer went off, we all stormed onto the ice. So that was pretty cool. A little bit of a different experience, but not playing in the game. But I was so proud of my team and what we had accomplished, and obviously winning is sweet regardless of whether you're scoring the big goal or you're watching up in the stands. And that summer was pretty special too, because I got to celebrate and have the cup for, I think it was more than a couple weeks. I ended up getting it for longer than most of my teammates and staff, just because of the way things worked out. We don't all live in the same area. So there was like a lag between when I had to hand it off to the next player. So it worked out for me. I ended up getting the cup for a while and got to do some pretty cool stuff with it, and have a cup celebration party and share it with my friends and family, which was awesome. And also even for the game, just to have friends and family in attendance there supporting me regardless of whether I was on the ice or not, that was pretty special also.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, like, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know. I used to play hockey as a kid, and we win. I think we might have. I don't know if I ever, because I played mostly like house league stuff. But I think maybe we won like a really big game that like took us to like the finals, and that was pretty sweet. And we all got little medals and stuff like we're talking like 11, 12-year-old kids.
Mm-hmm.
And and it was, to even have that kind of feeling, it's just so special, something that you can't take away from anybody.
Absolutely. And I got to bring the Isabel Cup into work and show all my
Oh, that's awesome.
coworkers. I took, say her, because her name's Isabel, Lady Isabel, or Izzy as we call her. But I took her to like a fireworks show, which was pretty cool. There's me just walking up. It's like with a fireworks show like in the woods at like a carnival. There's me just walking up with this giant trophy, and people are staring at me like, "What the hell is that?" I got to take it to the New Jersey, the Capitol down in Trenton. We were invited. My team was invited to the General Assembly, which is just a voting session where they vote on different bills and whatnot, down in our state capitol. So I got to bring her there, and I was the only one from my team who could go because it was on a weekday. In like the middle of the day, I ended up taking the day off of work because I was like, I am one of the few players from New Jersey, like I have to be there.
Right.
So I made it work and delivered a speech to the General Assembly, which was a little bit nerve-wracking because here are all of these like political government people, and who knows if they like even know what hockey is. Like obviously they do, but who knows how much they know about women's hockey, or who knows if they even knew my league existed.
Right.
But that was pretty cool, just to like being a New Jersey native, being able to do that and really share the cup with my home state, was awesome.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Now, this has been itching at me for a little bit. So you got to tell me the whole story about how you got the nickname Moose.
Yeah, so of course this one always comes up. People are like, oh, she probably just likes the animal. Well, I do. Well, I do now, but when I was around 11 or 12, I had a teammate who had a pretty bad speech impediment. So she struggled to pronounce her R's. And my last name is Morse, like Morse code. And when she tried to say it, it ended up sounding like moose. So all my teammates just started calling that. My coaches started calling me that. My teachers in high school even called me that. But yeah, it just stuck. And then I think the moment that I really decided that I was going to be a fan of the moose as an animal, was when I actually saw one in person up in Lake Placid when I was going to school there. It was like,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Adirondack Mountains, so there's a lot of wildlife, and there are a lot of moose, out roaming around. I've heard many stories of people in that area who have encountered them, and this one was just weird because it was like on the edge of like Main Street, like the downtown area of Lake Placid, which is,
Oh my
it's
God.
seasonally like it can be pretty busy and crowded. It was just at the end of Main Street, and there were like cops around. Usually when like people see it, it's like either I've heard like on the highway or like somewhere hiking in the woods, right? Not like in a residential area. So that's why it was crazy. And I got to take a picture with it, but it was from really far back. So like, I don't know that you can
Yeah.
even see it, that because like the cops were around, they were like stopping people, and I was like, come on, I have to take a picture. Like my nickname is Moose.
Right.
But yeah, so other than dogs, I would say moose are my favorite animal.
Oh, okay. And moving forward, kind of getting back into the league here. So you got to go to the NWHL All-Star game or event just last year, was it? I think it was last year. So how was that experience?
That was awesome. It was in Boston, actually at the rink that the Boston team plays at. So I'm very familiar with it. It was comfortable. I was comfortable being there, especially going to school in Providence, and it's like an hour away from Boston. So I'm familiar with the city, and it's nice to be somewhere where I've played before, and actually one of my favorite places to play. And I got in. I made the All-Star game through the fan vote, which is pretty cool. Just because it just goes to show like how many loyal Riveters fans there are out there who are really pulling for me to to make it to All-Star Weekend, which is pretty special to me just to get voted in that way. And I ended up doing the hardest shot for a skills competition. I did not win, unfortunately, but I got second place. I was happy that that was the skill that I was chosen for, because I don't know how I would have done on the others.
Well, I gotta say, you got a hell of a shot. You got a hell of a slap shot for sure. Even if you got second place.
Yeah, I'll take it, because the girl who won has an unreal shot. People are afraid to stand in front of it. It hurts. She was my teammate on the Riveters previously, but yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to beat her realistically, so I was happy with second. But then the All-Star game the next day was pretty cool, and my team ended up pulling off the win. I think we were probably the underdogs going into it, so
right.
that was nice. And most of my teammates from the Riveters were on the other team for the All-Star game. I only had one of my teammates on my team, another defender. So it was fun to play against my teammates, because I'm not really used to doing that other than in practice, but not really in a game situation. It was pretty cool just to mess around with them and see how big of pests some of the forwards are to play against. And then obviously the fan engagement aspect was huge, and it always is. That's why our league exists, really, for the next generation of players. So to be able to do a fan skate with them and sign autographs and have more fan-centric events, I really enjoyed that aspect of it probably the most, actually, because you're used to seeing people come out for you when you're suiting up in your team's jersey, but when that's not the situation, having fans still come make the trip up to Boston to support you and to enjoy the weekend, that obviously means a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they don't just have the All-Star game or the event just to throw it on TV. I mean, it's the whole thing. It's for the fans. It's for the players. It's to give the players that spotlight. I mean, of course, you're playing games, but when you get to get voted in for things like that, I mean, it really gives a spotlight. Check out this player, what this player can do. Look at their skill. It really spotlights your skill and what you can do on the ice. So I think that's a great thing that they do for both men and women players.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely one of the highlights of this past season for me.
Yeah, no, I wanted your thoughts on some topics in women's hockey. So I know you mentioned about there's kind of a rule on hitting and fighting and whatnot. Now, do you find that that's something that they should address? Should there be hitting in women's hockey? I feel like there should be more of that women's equality there, because the idea that I get from it is women can't hit. We got to protect everybody, and I just don't like that. I think I want to see what women can do. I want to see women hit other women, because you don't see it. So
well, yeah. I've always been for it, but you see in the NHL right now, fighting is going on less and less. The game's changing.
Yes.
So the women's game needs to evolve as well, and maybe in the other direction towards more physicality. And I think the NWHL is a pretty physical league.
Yep.
As compared to college, absolutely. So they do let a lot go a lot of times. So I like that about it. But I still think that could change. And yeah, going back to what you said about equality, why does it have to be any different? I struggle with explaining to people who aren't familiar with hockey why we can't hit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have an answer for it. But as I sort of alluded to earlier, there are some people who appreciate the women's game more because there's no hitting.
Right.
It's sort of more finesse, and you can display talent and whatnot. And I think that's sort of the path that the NHL is going down to an extent. So if that's the way the game's headed, I don't know that like now is necessarily the right time to be making that change. I think it or like already should have been allowed in women's hockey. Like why was there ever any difference?
Right.
Like
Yeah, and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
and I think it would help draw larger crowds as well if there was hitting in women's hockey.
Yeah, and that's kind of one thing that my girlfriend brought up. She's a huge fan of women's hockey. She loves, I mean, no offense, but she's more for watches a lot of the Team Canada stuff for, we're Canadian, right?
Of course.
But she loves women's hockey, like, and that's one thing she does bring up. Like we talk about her. I talked to her about it, like, oh, like, and I said to her, I'm like, but there's no hitting in women's hockey, and she's like, well, it's not allowed. And I said, yeah, well, like, I think there should be. I love to see what the women can do. I love to see them hit other women. Like, it'd be kind of cool to see because you don't really see that. And she's like, well, but the good thing about it is you get to see all the skill that comes out. That's why with some of the men, you just see them hit each other, and it's just all about endurance. And that's kind of one thing I've really gone to appreciate about women's hockey is you see, because there's not so much hitting, there's not so much fighting or so much of the scrimmage and everything going on. You typically see a lot more of the skill come out of the players, and it's great to see that. It's great to see like how much skill these women have. No, not taking away that the men don't, but with the men, I think it kind of gets a little bit like their skill, I think, gets thrown out of the wind a little bit because there's so much more physicality. I don't know.
Yeah, so exactly. I'm like sometimes on the fence about it. But I think like the kid in me, like the little girl in me wants the rules of the game and the physicality to be exactly the same on the men's side and the women's side. But at the same time now my career, I'm getting a little bit older and I'm used to playing a certain way. I think it would be an adjustment to allow checking now at this point in my career. But yeah, ultimately I would say I don't see any reason why, women can't check, and that should be part of the game.
Right. And another thing that really bothers me is that why in the women's league do they have to wear the cages? Why they can't wear the visors like the men? I never understood that.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for you. I don't know. I mean, that one I feel less strongly about, just because keeps my face and like teeth intact, and I'm
That's
good with
true.
that. So, but yeah, if that should be at the same time, that should be an option. If you want to wear the full cage versus a visor or shield, like whatever.
Right.
It's your body. You should be able to make the choice.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. Like I've seen a couple games in the men's league, and I don't know if it was a guy on Arizona Coyotes. It was some player, and he actually had the full. One guy had a cage, and one guy had the full like face shield on, and I was like, I don't know, but I don't know if that was just because maybe he like if he was injured, like if he got hurt or whatever. But I was like, wow, like to see that for once, like you never ever see that in the men's league. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, well, you don't see that every day.
Yeah, anytime I see it in a men's league, I assume that it's because of an injury.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can make the argument that without the cage, you can see their face more and like know what they look like, because that's what a lot of people say who like see a women's hockey game for the first time. They're like, I have no idea what the players look like because they're wearing like full equipment, they're covered head to toe plus a cage. Where I think maybe the men's like NHL, they're a little bit more visible because you can see their face. In addition to like the up close camera angles and everything, and just more visibility. But who knows? It might help the women's game if we did away with the cages.
Oh, 100%. Now, let's talk about like with the expansion of the team. So obviously, Toronto Six is the new expanded team that's come into the league. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that that's good for the league to have a Canadian team join in?
Absolutely. I mean, what's a hockey league without a Canadian team? Come on.
Yes, Canadians, come on.
And especially in Toronto, I think it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen. So I'm glad that the expansion was solidified for the upcoming season. Their jerseys are unreal.
Oh yeah, I do like it. I to kind of elaborate on that. I like the fact that they made them black because I think that it's good that they did something a little bit different and not follow suit of what the other Toronto teams have done. Obviously, with the Toronto Marlies, it's blue. Well, pretty much it's the same as the Toronto Maple Leafs because they're affiliated with the
Right.
under the organization. But I was glad to kind of see that the women's league that they kind of stayed away from that and they didn't try to like duplicate like the colors and all that. They did their own thing. It's their own league. They're not letting the NHL have their say in it. It's nice to kind of have their own thing. But yeah, I really like their jerseys as well. And like I've been kind of staying top of like who's getting signed on the team just for podcast reasons, so I can kind of get an idea, get an idea of who I can get on. And it seems like quite a new signings, like because I know that they did originally have the Toronto Flurries, I think that was in the Canadian League, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of players from that team get signed on, so I don't know what's going on there. But
Yeah, I also agree that switching up the colors, incorporating the black. I mean, I love their colors to begin with, but sort of straying away from the traditional Toronto colors, I think was probably a strategic decision that was made intentionally, and just to make them unique. I mean, it's a new market for the NWHL. We're reintroducing hockey, women's hockey, to this market, so I think it should be different. We're not, we aren't the CWHL. We are the Maple Leafs, obviously. So switching it up was, I think, the right call, and the jerseys turned out, as we discussed, pretty sweet. So I'm looking forward to traveling up to Canada because I really haven't been to Canada since like high school, where I would play there a lot, and I love Canada. So got the chance to go last year because when we played in Buffalo, there's a Buffalo team in the NWHL. When we played them, obviously it's pretty close to the border. So I went to Niagara Falls, the Canadian side, obviously.
right.
And also got to visit Wayne Gretzky Estates, which was pretty cool. Picked up a couple bottles of wine, and saw the rink he has there, which I didn't even know that existed until we were literally just driving, and somebody, or must have been at Niagara Falls, and somebody just told us. So that was pretty cool to visit the country again, be back there. It's just a different feeling, and people are so polite and appreciate hockey. So I think there's only good things to come for the Toronto team, and there'll probably be a huge rivalry there with Buffalo, not
Oh
being
yeah.
too far away.
Oh yeah, I think there will be for sure. I mean, it's no secret that the Sabres and Maple Leafs, there's always been that rival, not just with the players, but with the fans as well. I know like there's been so much stuff that have happened actually. Yeah, and I think and kind of talking about the Toronto team, I think that it's definitely gonna do like you said, a lot of good things for the league. I think because Toronto's I mean, it's a huge city to begin with, but it's such a huge marketing city that, I mean, Toronto fans are just so passionate about their teams. I mean, if we're talking about the soccer or the Argonauts or Maple Leafs, and in that case, the Toronto fans have always been. I mean, it's like Boston. I mean, I think they said that Boston was like ranked as like the number one for fans, for the fan base or whatever, but it's like Boston, same kind of thing. Like they're so passionate about their teams, and I think with that being said, it will help drive more fans into the NWHL league, and that will definitely gain. I think that will bring more attention to that league for sure because of that fan base and getting that Canadian team in.
I think so too. And we have fans in different countries too, because like outside North America,
Hmm.
who are just supporters of women's hockey, or want to see the sport grow, or maybe don't have access to watch the NHL, for example, or other leagues that are out there.
Right.
So not having Canada on that list, or not having as much support from our brothers and sisters up north, was not helping the league, I would say.
Right.
So it's big news, and I think it'll be interesting to see how this season pans out. Especially with the travel too, going across the border. It'll be different. I mean, I'm just excited to travel to a new place and play in front of super passionate fans. To your point, especially in like one of the most, if not the most traditional hockey market in the world. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's huge for us, and I know all the players, my teammates, players on other teams are really excited.
Well, that's good. That's good. I just have one more question for you. I know that you have some things to do. So I guess with especially with women's hockey, how do you balance hockey and family or social life?
It's pretty tough. I won't lie, but it's something that I've pretty much done my whole life.
Hmm.
I think playing at the pro level has brought its own set of unique challenges, just because before I was a kid and my obligations were really like school and then my social life.
Right.
I didn't have to like provide for myself.
Hmm.
So now throwing that in the mix, and working a full-time job while playing has never been easy. But at the same time, I can't really picture my life without it. I can't
Hmm.
imagine. I guess I relish the opportunity to work a full day, and then instead of just going home and maybe like cooking dinner, sitting on the couch, unwinding for the day, I'm able to go to a hockey rink, be around, people who share that passion with me, and I get the social aspect there too,
Hmm.
a little bit, just joking around with my teammates before practice and whatnot. And then I get to anything that's stressing me out or going on in my head from that day. Say it's work related. I can just forget about all of that for that time that I'm on the ice, and that's my way to unwind. So I can't picture my life any other way, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. I think to myself, like, what would I do on weekends if like I wasn't playing hockey?
Right.
I'm obviously so passionate about it, and if I could do it full time as a career and not have to have another job, I absolutely would. I mean, that's what I'm really like working towards, along with my peers in the league, trying
Hmm.
to build that for the next generation. So that's what keeps me motivated. Like, none of this is really about me. Like I said, it's nice to be able to get on the ice and still compete at a very high level and do what I love. But it's really for the future, so that young girls, when they grow up, won't have to choose between a career and continuing to play hockey. That there'll be a viable option for them, and the league will be sustainable, and they won't have to worry about how they're going to supplement their income.
Right. And just to kind of add on to that, how many years do you think you're going to continue playing hockey for? Do you have a set date or?
No, I mean, I never intended to play this long, I won't lie. Um, it's kind of been a reevaluation and reflection process after every single season. Um, and probably more so in the past than this season, because I just had so much fun this past season.
Hmm.
I loved my team. Um, we really came together as a group. I had my best season, like I said, performance wise. So I feel like I still have a lot left in me, and I don't see myself retiring, hanging them up anytime soon. But obviously, there's going to be a point where I want to settle down a little bit more and probably start a family. Luckily, I'm not someone who really sees that happening in the next like 5 years
Right.
or anything. Because I've been pretty adamant about like wanting to enjoy my life in my 20s and my early to mid 30s. So I'm probably going to push that back as far as I can. And luckily, in the situation I'm in, I identify as a lesbian, so when I do want to start a family, it's going to be a little more challenging for me. So those are things that I have to consider. And who says I can't also have a child and continue to play?
There you go.
The Riveters captain is having a child in about a month. Her wife is actually.
Oh, so that kind of works out for her then. Then, she can continue playing while
Exactly. Um,
perfect.
but that's going to be hard for her too. She works a full-time job as well.
Yeah.
And she lives in Connecticut. So I guess I'll sort of learn from her and see how she's able to balance it. But I know that my teammates and I are just so excited she's having a boy, to have a little guy, at the rink. And I know that she and her wife are really excited to have all these strong female role models, in his life and really making an impact on him early. So that'll be exciting to see. But yeah, I don't intend on retiring anytime soon. But it's always after every season an evaluation process. How much longer do I want to do this? How much longer can I do this? But I still feel young and healthy and like there's a lot more in me left to give.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. I know you have some things that you have to attend to today. So I just want to thank you, Rebecca, for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Luke, and good luck with everything. And as you continue to grow your podcast, this was fun.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much, and good luck on the upcoming season.
All right, thanks.